So I saw Guardians of the Galaxy Vol.2 the other day, and it was pretty neat. If anyone's heard my remarks on Marvel movies on my podcast or anywhere else, they would know I am by no means a big fan of them. Many of them are decent enough, but never really move past a lot of their problems, and feel very stale. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 was largely the exception to this, as it had a clear vision, as well as having the luxury of being mostly separate from the confines of the rest of the Marvel continuity. While Avengers symbolized the snarky, fun tone that Marvel movies had become known for, Guardians managed to both perfect it and in many cases transcend it. It provided a solid cast of well-defined characters that we want to see adventures from. Volume 2, if anything, has an even clearer vision. I suspect the success of the first film encouraged Marvel Studios to give James Gunn even more creative freedom with this entry. The visuals are more outlandish, there's more heart, and for once there's actual consequences in a Marvel movie. Humor is as much a part of Guardians as the theme of family is to The Godfather, and for the most part, the humor hits the mark. It has a great sense of timing you would expect from a follow-up to the first Guardians, and it's mostly derived from each character's individual personality. While Avengers would have every character take on a universal, sarcastic tone in order to fit Joss Whedon's preferred comic stylings, Guardians 1's comedy relied on each character having their own thing, and that carries over to this new entry. That being said, there was definitely a feeling throughout the movie that there was a need to one-up the previous entry in the comedy department. Jokes almost never left more than a minute between them, and this carried over into even the dramatic moments. Now, this may sound like a complaint, and in some instances it is. However, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 overall makes great usage of this setup, and often uses comedy to bolster the drama. The jokes make you like the characters, so when they are ultimately put in danger, you are invested in the action on screen. But even this is your script writing 101 stuff, make good characters and all that. But Guardians 2 actually did something I've rarely seen in movies. Use run-on gags to actually increase stakes and tension. The best example of this comes in the form of Baby Groot, who has a reoccurring skit about how he doesn't take instructions correctly. I won't get into direct spoilers, but suffice to say the expectations from this gag are later utilized in order to subvert them. Music is used in much the same fashion as it was in the previous film, and luckily it works just as well. I'm not a particular fan of 70s pop music, but the choices here emphasize the fun neon-lit adventure. Not only that, but music was a bit more important to the actual story in this entry, with songs such as Father and Son by Cat Stevens being directly relevant to the themes portrayed in the movie. It goes back to my previous point about comedy. The music is there to keep the mood overall upbeat, but it also helps emphasize the dramatic themes and scenes throughout the film. Despite all the glam and pop music, Guardians 2 has a great layer of hard grit to it. There's a lot of outright murder in this film, and one of the biggest blood fests is unfortunately spoiled a bit by the trailer. People are stabbed, exploded, shot to pieces, ejected into space, and through it all, genuine consequences come of it. Other Marvel movies, and especially DC's outings, I'm looking at you, Man of Steel, have huge destructive battles where people literally have to be dying. Yet the movie is still presented in a very clean fashion, and you almost never see innocents getting injured. Guardians completely removes this plastic cover and allows dirt to give it some character. Avoiding spoilers, I will say that there are real consequences in this film. It made me shed a tear or two during its runtime, and that is something that has been severely lacking in the superhero movie genre recently. The humor, the grit, and the music all go perfectly towards highlighting the strong character interactions. In such a large group of primary characters, it's important to have well-established dynamics between each of them, and Guardians actually goes to even greater lengths than most films would in order to achieve this. While you have the obvious pairings in the film like Quinn and Gamora, there are some real surprises. Guardians took advantage of the previous establishment from the first entry. Instead of having such a large focus on Quinn and Yondu, each is given their own plot lines and motivations. We see Yondu evolve as a character from his adventures with Rocket, and we see Quinn's arc from finding his father. Yet the movie still manages to connect these separate stories into the overarching themes of the movie. As much as I thoroughly enjoyed the movie, about halfway through it, I was beginning to feel let down by the primary storyline between Quinn and Ego. It was extremely predictable and failed to actually create an emotional stake in the two's relationship. Thankfully, it doesn't take up too much of the movie, and Quinn's arc disregarding ego isn't horrible. I also felt Gamora and Nebula's plot could have been more evolved. It just kind of resolved abruptly about halfway through the movie. However, as the movie continued, I found myself forgetting about these faults, and the movie was able to find that happy place where its fun factor just kind of makes you forget about its problems. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is a real popcorn movie. And no, I don't mean that as a thinly veiled excuse for its sucking, as if it was a Transformers movie. It takes advantage of its big budget to tell a grand sci-fi story, without losing its heart in the process. I know this sounds like fanboy fawning, and to an extent it is. I am a definite fan of the Guardians films, and I'm currently fawning over this movie. But I wouldn't be doing so if the movie wasn't worth it. James Gunn shows that at least for one small part of it, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has a genuine artistic alcove in it.